Life has this way of pushing us into moments where we feel isolated, alone. And let me tell you, that's not an accident. It's not a mistake. It's part of the process. You see, before any great elevation, before any breakthrough, God calls you to a season of solitude. And you might be asking, why? Why do I have to go through this alone? Why can't the people I love, the friends I trust, be there with me? But here's the truth. Elevation requires separation, because when you're surrounded by noise, by opinions, by distractions, you can't hear the whisper of your own calling. You can't tap into the power that's been placed inside of you since the beginning. That's solitude. It's not punishment. It's preparation. It's in the quiet that you confront your fears. It's in the stillness that you wrestle with your doubts. And it's in that isolation that you discover just how powerful you really are. Think about it. Every great leader, every world changer, every person who's left a mark on this world, they all went through it. Moses spent time alone in the desert before leading his people to freedom. Jesus went into the wilderness before stepping into his ministry. Even in nature, the seed has to be buried in the dark soil before it can break through and grow into something magnificent. The butterfly struggles alone in the cocoon before it can soar. But here's where most people get stuck. When they feel alone, they start to believe they're abandoned. They think, God, why have you left me? But listen to me, you're not abandoned. You're being refined, you're being stretched, you're being strengthened. That loneliness you feel, it's the pressure that creates the diamond. It's the fire that purifies the gold. It's the process that builds the character necessary to handle the next level of blessing, the next level of responsibility. Because let's be honest, everyone wants the success. Everyone wants the spotlight, but not everyone is ready for what comes with it. If God elevated you before you were ready, it would crush you. It would overwhelm you. So he pulls you aside. He says, let me work on you in private before I showcase you in public. He's pruning away the people who don't belong in your next chapter. He's stripping off the habits that won't serve you in your future. And yes, it's uncomfortable. Growth is uncomfortable, but comfort is the enemy of progress. So if you're in that season right now, if you feel like you're walking this road alone, I want you to shift your perspective. Don't see it as loneliness, see it as training. Don't see it as rejection, see it as redirection. This is the time when you're building your foundation. This is the time when you're learning to depend not on others, but on your faith, on your resilience, on your purpose. Because when the elevation comes, and it will come, you'll look back on this season with gratitude. You'll realize that the solitude didn't break you, it made you. It prepared you to handle the weight of your destiny. It gave you the clarity to walk into your calling with confidence and conviction. So embrace this season. Lean into it. Trust that God is not just watching from a distance. He's right there with you, molding you, shaping you, preparing you. Because when the time is right, when you've been refined, when you've been strengthened, you won't just rise, you'll soar. And the world will see the masterpiece that was forged in the quiet, in the solitude, in the fire. Remember, before every elevation, there's a preparation, and your time is coming. Divine preparation is a process that often unfolds in the quiet, hidden moments of our lives when we feel most isolated and alone. It's during these times that God is doing his most profound work within us, shaping and molding us for the elevation that lies ahead. While it might feel like abandonment, it is, in reality, an intentional and necessary step in our spiritual journey. God calls us to these seasons of solitude not to punish us, but to prepare us, because elevation without preparation can lead to failure. The weight of success, influence, or leadership is heavy, and without the internal strength and clarity that come from divine preparation, we might not be able to sustain it. When God removes the noise, the distractions, and even some of the people from our lives, it's an invitation to go deeper. In the solitude, we are confronted with our true selves, the good, the bad, and the broken. There's no one to impress, no one to hide behind. It's just us and God. And in that space, he begins to reveal things we couldn't see before. Maybe it's unresolved pain, limiting beliefs, or fears we buried deep. Maybe it's untapped potential or a calling we've been too afraid to acknowledge. Whatever it is, divine preparation brings it to the surface. Because you can't step into your next level while carrying the baggage of your past. It's also in this preparation that God strengthens our faith. When you're alone, you learn to rely not on the validation of others, but on your relationship with God. You begin to hear his voice more clearly because there are fewer distractions competing for your attention. This deepening of faith becomes the foundation for your elevation. You see, when challenges come, and they will, you won't be shaken because you've already been through the fire. You've already learned that your strength doesn't come from external circumstances, but from a higher source. That kind of faith can only be forged in the quiet places, in the wilderness seasons of life. Divine preparation is also about refining your character. Talent might get you noticed, but character is what will sustain you. God knows the pressures that come with elevation, whether it's leadership, success, or influence. And he wants to ensure that you have the integrity, humility, and resilience to handle it. Sometimes that means removing relationships that aren't serving your growth, stripping away habits that don't align with your purpose, or putting you in situations that test your patience and perseverance. It might feel like you're being broken down, but in reality, you're being built up. Every challenge, every setback, every lonely night is a tool in God's hands, shaping you into the person you need to be for the next season of your life. And let's not forget timing. God's timing is perfect, but it rarely aligns with our own. We live in a world that glorifies instant gratification, but divine preparation doesn't operate on our schedule. It takes as long as it needs to take. Sometimes that means waiting longer than we'd like, sitting in the discomfort of the unknown, trusting that God is orchestrating things behind the scenes. It forces us to surrender our need for control and lean into the belief that when the time is right, the doors will open and we will be ready to walk through them. When the elevation finally comes, you'll realize that the solitude wasn't a detour, it was the path. You'll see that every moment of loneliness, every unanswered prayer, every silent night was part of a greater plan. You'll recognize that you needed that time to grow, to heal, to prepare. And when you step into your elevation, you'll carry with you not just the skills and knowledge you've gained, but the wisdom, strength, and faith that can only come from divine preparation. So if you're in that season right now, feeling alone and wondering why, remember this: God hasn't forgotten you. He's preparing you. And when the time comes, you won't just rise, you'll soar, fully equipped to handle the blessings and responsibilities that come with your elevation. Spiritual growth is often a journey that unfolds in solitude, a process that God uses to prepare us for the next level of our lives. When we are called to be alone, it may feel confusing or even painful, but it's in these quiet, isolated moments that the most profound transformation takes place. God knows that before he elevates you, he must first grow you spiritually. This growth is not just about learning more or gaining knowledge. It's about deepening your relationship with him, strengthening your faith, and becoming the person capable of handling the blessings and responsibilities that come with elevation. When you're surrounded by people and constant activity, it's easy to become distracted. The noise of the world can drown out the voice of God. But when God calls you to be alone, he's creating a space where you can hear him more clearly. In that silence, you begin to recognize his guidance in ways you never noticed before. You start to discern his purpose for your life, and this clarity becomes the foundation of your spiritual growth. It's in these moments of solitude that your dependence shifts from external validation to a deeper trust in God's plan. Being alone also forces you to confront parts of yourself that you might otherwise ignore. Spiritual growth isn't just about feeling good or having a sense of peace. It's about refining your character and aligning your heart with God's will. When you're isolated, there's no one else to blame, no distractions to hide behind. You come face to face with your fears, your doubts, and your weaknesses. But it's in this confrontation that growth happens. God uses these moments to prune away the parts of us that are not aligned with his purpose, making room for new growth, new strength, and new understanding. In solitude, you also learn to cultivate patience and trust. Spiritual growth doesn't happen overnight. It's a gradual process that requires time and surrender. When God calls you to be alone, it often feels like a period of waiting. You may not see immediate results, and it's tempting to feel frustrated or abandoned. But this waiting period is essential. It teaches you to rely on God's timing rather than your own. It stretches your faith, pushing you to trust that even when you can't see what's ahead, God is working behind the scenes, preparing you for what's to come. During these times of isolation, prayer and reflection become powerful tools for spiritual growth. Without the constant noise of daily life, you have the opportunity to deepen your prayer life, to meditate on God's word, and to seek his presence in a more intimate way. This connection strengthens your faith and gives you the resilience to face future challenges. You begin to see God not just as a distant figure, but as a constant companion, guiding and supporting you through every step of your journey. Another important aspect of spiritual growth in solitude is learning to let go of what no longer serves you. This could be relationships, habits, or mindsets that are holding you back from your true potential. God uses these quiet seasons to help you release these burdens, freeing you to step into your purpose with a clear mind and a renewed spirit. It's a process of shedding the old to make way for the new. And while it can be uncomfortable, it's necessary for your elevation. When the time comes for your elevation, you'll look back on this season of solitude and recognize its value. You'll see that it wasn't a time of stagnation, but a time of profound growth. The lessons you learned, the strength you gained, and the faith you developed will all serve you in the next chapter of your life. You'll realize that without this period of spiritual growth, you wouldn't have been ready for the opportunities and responsibilities that came with your elevation. So if you're feeling alone right now, take heart. This is not a season of abandonment. It's a season of preparation. God is growing you spiritually, shaping you into the person you need to be to handle the next level of your journey. Embrace the solitude, lean into the process, and trust that when the time is right, you'll emerge stronger, wiser, and ready to soar. Isolation for elevation is a concept that many people struggle to understand, especially when they find themselves in seasons of loneliness or separation. It can feel like abandonment or punishment, but in reality, it's a divine strategy. When God calls you to be alone, it's not because he's forgotten you, it's because he's preparing you for something greater. Isolation is not the end of the journey. It's the process that leads to elevation. It's in these quiet, solitary seasons that God does his most transformative work, shaping you into the person you need to be to handle the blessings and responsibilities that lie ahead. When God isolates you, he's removing distractions from your life, the noise, the opinions of others, and even certain relationships can cloud your judgment. Without the constant input from the world around you, you begin to hear God's voice more clearly. You start to understand his direction and recognize his hand in your life. This clarity is essential for elevation because you can't step into your next season if you're confused about your purpose or distracted by things that don't align with your calling. Isolation also serves as a time of reflection and self-discovery. When you're alone, you're forced to confront yourself, your strengths, your weaknesses, your fears, and your dreams. There's no one else to hide behind, and no external distractions to keep you from facing the truth about who you are and where you need to grow. This self-awareness is critical for elevation. You can't rise to new heights if you're carrying unresolved issues, unhealthy habits, or limiting beliefs. God uses isolation to bring these things to the surface so you can address them, heal, and grow. Another powerful aspect of isolation is that it builds resilience and independence. When you're isolated, you learn to rely on God and yourself in ways you never had to before. You discover inner strength and resourcefulness that you didn't know existed. This resilience is crucial because elevation comes with new challenges and pressures. The higher you rise, the more responsibility you carry and the more obstacles you'll face. The strength and confidence you develop in isolation will equip you to handle these challenges without crumbling under the weight of them. Isolation is also a time of preparation. God is preparing you for the opportunities and responsibilities that come with elevation. He's equipping you with the skills, knowledge, and character you'll need to succeed in your next season. Sometimes this preparation involves learning new things, developing new habits, or gaining new experiences. Other times it's about refining your character, teaching you patience, humility, and perseverance. It might feel like you're being delayed, but in reality, you're being developed. God knows that premature elevation can lead to failure, so he takes the time to prepare you thoroughly before promoting you. One of the most challenging parts of isolation is the waiting. It can feel like nothing is happening, like you're stuck in a season of inactivity. But even in the waiting, God is working. He's orchestrating events behind the scenes, aligning opportunities, and preparing the right people to come into your life at the right time. The waiting is not wasted time. It's a crucial part of the process. It teaches you patience and trust, and it allows God to work in ways you can't see or understand. When the time for elevation finally comes, you'll look back on your season of isolation and see it for what it truly was, a necessary step in your journey. You'll realize that the solitude, the challenges, and the growth were all part of God's plan to prepare you for the blessings and responsibilities you now carry. You'll understand that without that season of isolation, you wouldn't have been ready for your elevation. So if you're in a season of isolation right now, don't lose hope. Embrace it as a time of growth and preparation. Trust that God is using this time to refine you, strengthen you, and equip you for what's next. Remember that isolation is not the end. It's the process that leads to your elevation. And when the time is right, you'll step into your next season with confidence, clarity, and the assurance that you are exactly where you're meant to be. Faith and solitude are two powerful forces that work hand in hand when God calls you to be alone before your elevation. On the surface, solitude may seem like an uncomfortable or even negative experience, but it is often in these quiet, isolated moments that God deepens our faith and prepares us for what's ahead. God knows that before he elevates you, he must first strengthen your foundation, and there is no better way to do that than by drawing you into a season of solitude where your faith can grow and mature. When God calls you to be alone, it's often because he wants to remove all the external distractions that keep you from truly depending on him. In the hustle and bustle of life, it's easy to rely on other people, our own abilities, or the things of this world for comfort and security. But in solitude, you are stripped of all those crutches, leaving you with nothing but God and your faith. It's in this moment of emptiness that God has the opportunity to fill you with a deeper understanding of who he is and how much you truly need him. As you experience this isolation, you learn to lean into your faith in ways you may never have before because you don't have anyone or anything else to rely on. Solitude, while challenging, provides a space where your faith can be refined and tested. It is in the quiet that you confront your doubts, your fears, and your weaknesses. Without the noise of the world to distract you, you are forced to look inward and reflect on where your trust truly lies. Faith is not just a feeling or a belief, it's a decision. In times of solitude, you are given the opportunity to actively choose to trust God, even when you can't see the way forward. This process of choosing faith, even in the absence of immediate answers, builds a resilience within you that will carry you through future challenges. In solitude, God also works to strengthen your relationship with him. Without the distraction of the world's voices and opinions, you begin to hear his voice more clearly. You learn to recognize his promptings and guidance in ways that you couldn't when surrounded by constant noise. This deepened connection with God is foundational for your elevation because when you step into the next season of your life, you will need to be able to discern his will for you more than ever. The stronger your relationship with him, the better equipped you will be to handle the responsibilities and opportunities that come with elevation. Another aspect of faith in solitude is the opportunity for deep, intimate prayer. When you're alone, there is no one to impress, no one to judge you. It's just you and God. This space allows for raw, honest conversation with him. It's in this place of vulnerability that your faith is nurtured and tested. You may find yourself praying with a deeper level of sincerity and passion because there's no pretense, no facade, just a genuine desire to connect with the one who created you. As you pour your heart out to God, he listens, he moves, he speaks. This deep personal communion with him strengthens your faith and equips you with the peace and confidence you need to move forward in your journey. Solitude also teaches you patience and trust in God's timing. In the waiting, your faith is stretched. It can feel like nothing is happening, like you're stuck or forgotten. But during this time, God is doing a work in you that you can't always see. His ways are higher than ours, and his timing is perfect. Solitude forces you to release the need for immediate results and trust that God's plan is unfolding in ways you may not fully understand yet. It's in this waiting period that your faith deepens. and you begin to see that God is preparing you for something greater than you could have ever imagined. The combination of faith and solitude is transformative. When you emerge from this season, you won't just be a different person, you'll be a person who has learned to trust God fully, who has deepened in faith, and who is ready to handle the elevation that is coming. You'll have the spiritual stamina to face challenges, the discernment to follow God's lead, and the unwavering belief that He is always with you, even in the quietest, loneliest moments. That by rejecting the plan to stay in your house and follow God's callings, you also reject. So if you're in a season of solitude right now, remember that it is not a punishment or a sign that you are forgotten. It is a time for your faith to grow, for your relationship with God to deepen, and for you to be prepared for the elevation that is on the horizon. Embrace this season as an opportunity to build the kind of faith that will carry you through every challenge and help you rise to the heights God has planned for you. Purposeful loneliness is a concept that may seem paradoxical at first. How can loneliness, something that many perceive as negative, be purposeful? Yet in the eyes of God, loneliness is often a necessary and intentional part of your journey. It's a season in which God calls you to be alone, not by accident, but for a divine purpose. When God calls you to experience loneliness before your elevation, it is not to punish you or leave you in despair. It is to prepare you for the next stage of your life. There is profound value in these solitary moments as they provide an opportunity for growth, clarity, and a deeper connection with God. Loneliness, when it is purposeful, helps to separate you from distractions that can cloud your judgment and interfere with your destiny. Life is filled with noise, voices from friends, family, colleagues, and the world around you. These external influences often distract us from our true calling. When God calls you to be alone, He is giving you space to hear His voice more clearly. In the absence of distractions, you are able to turn inward, reflect on your life, and tune into the calling He has placed on your heart. This solitude gives you the chance to focus on your spiritual journey without interference, making it a critical time for you to seek clarity about your purpose and your next steps. Purposeful loneliness also provides an opportunity for self-discovery. When you are isolated, you are forced to confront the parts of yourself that you may have been avoiding. It's easy to fill our lives with busyness and relationships to avoid dealing with our inner struggles, but loneliness brings all of those hidden issues to the surface. In this time alone, you begin to face your fears, your insecurities, and your weaknesses. God uses this time not only to refine your character, but also to reveal to you the areas where you need to grow. In moments of isolation, you learn who you truly are, free from the pressure of others' expectations. You become more self-awareness, and this self-awareness is essential for the elevation that lies ahead. Without this season of solitude, you might miss the opportunity to work on the very parts of yourself that are necessary for success. This period of purposeful loneliness is also a time for strengthening your relationship with God. When you're isolated, you no longer rely on external sources for validation, support, or affirmation. Instead, you are left with only God, and this forces you to turn to Him for everything. It is in these moments of loneliness that you learn to depend solely on Him for comfort, direction, and strength. As you seek Him in your solitude, your relationship with Him deepens and your faith grows stronger. You begin to realize that God is all you need and that He will provide everything else in His timing. It's the lessons you learn in loneliness are often the ones that solidify your faith and shape your future. Through this process, you develop a spiritual resilience that will carry you through the challenges and opportunities that come with elevation. Moreover, purposeful loneliness allows for the shedding of unnecessary baggage. Many times, we hold on to relationships, habits, and mindsets that no longer serve us. In a season of solitude, God removes these things not to hurt us, but to make room for what is essential for our growth. You may find that certain people, places, or things begin to fade away during this time of loneliness. This is part of God's refining process. He is clearing the path for you to walk in the fullness of your purpose. It might feel painful at first, but it is in the solitude that you are given the clarity to see what truly matters and what you need to let go of in order to move forward. The purpose of loneliness is not only for internal growth, but also for preparation for what lies ahead. Before elevation, God knows you need to be strengthened, equipped, and refined. He knows that the next level of your life will come with new responsibilities, new challenges, and new opportunities. Without the solitude to prepare you, you might not be ready to face them, just like a seed that must be buried in the soil and remain in darkness before it can sprout. You too must endure a period of isolation in order to grow and flourish into the person you are meant to be. When the time comes for your elevation, you will look back at this season of purposeful loneliness with gratitude. You will realize that it was not a time of abandonment, but a time of divine preparation. Through this time, God refined you, clarified your purpose, and deepened your relationship with Him. The person you are becoming in this season will be the person you need to be in order to thrive in the next season. And when your elevation comes, you will be ready to rise, knowing that the loneliness was not only purposeful, but necessary for the growth and transformation that have taken place inside of you. God's timing is one of the most profound and often misunderstood aspects of our spiritual journey. It can be difficult to grasp why God sometimes calls us to be alone, especially when we feel ready for elevation or when we see others around us stepping into new seasons of growth and opportunity. But understanding God's timing is key to trusting His plan for our lives. When God calls you to be alone before your elevation, it is not because He is punishing you or delaying your success. It is because He knows exactly when you are ready, even if you don't. His timing is perfect and His ways are higher than our own. In times of isolation, it can be easy to feel like you're being left behind. You may watch as others around you seem to move forward, advancing in their careers, relationships, or personal growth. It's natural to question why you are being held back or why you are being asked to wait. However, God's timing is never random or without purpose. He knows what's ahead for you and He sees the bigger picture. What might seem like a delay to you is actually God making sure that everything is in place for your elevation. He's preparing you in ways you cannot yet understand, aligning circumstances and opportunities that you cannot see from where you stand. God's timing allows for deep preparation. When He calls you to be alone, He isn't just keeping you in isolation for the sake of it. He is preparing you for something greater. It's in these seasons of solitude that God shapes your character, strengthens your faith, and gives you the wisdom necessary for the challenges that come with elevation. If you were to be elevated before this preparation, you might not be able to handle the weight of what's to come. God is ensuring that when you step into your next season, you are equipped to succeed and remain grounded. His timing isn't about a quick fix or an immediate reward. It's about your long-term growth and success. Waiting on God's timing also teaches us patience, trust, and surrender. It's in those moments of uncertainty and stillness that we learn to let go of our need to control the outcome. When God calls us to wait, He's asking us to trust that His plan for us is far better than anything we could orchestrate on our own. Our human nature often wants things to happen quickly, but God knows that sometimes the best things come when we are patient and willing to trust His process. The waiting period is where our faith is tested and strengthened. It's a time when God refines our desires, aligns our hearts with His will, and helps us to grow into the person we need to be to fully appreciate and handle the elevation that awaits us. The process of waiting also helps us learn the importance of timing in our personal lives. Many times, we want things to happen on our timeline, but God sees the right time for everything. He knows the exact moment when everything will align, when we are ready, when the world around us is ready, and when our purpose will unfold. When you feel like you're in a season of waiting, remember that God's timing is at work. He is preparing you, and while it may not feel like it, He is orchestrating the right circumstances and aligning the right people, events, and opportunities to open up at just the right moment. You can trust that His timing is always perfect and that you don't have to rush the process. Another important aspect of God's timing is His ability to prevent things from happening prematurely. Sometimes we want something so badly that we rush ahead of God's plan. However, stepping out before God's timing can lead to mistakes, disappointment, or even unnecessary hardship. Letting go of difficult. God in His wisdom knows when we are ready for the challenges of the next season. And He also knows when we need more time to grow, heal, or learn. His timing protects us from stepping into something too soon and ensures that we are prepared to face the responsibilities that come with elevation. God's timing also reveals his faithfulness. While we might feel impatient or uncertain during the waiting period, we can trust that God is working behind the scenes. And he has never failed to keep his promises, and he will not start now. The waiting period isn't a time of abandonment, but a time of development and trust. When you look back on this season of solitude and isolation, you'll see how God was perfectly positioning you for elevation all along. So if you find yourself in a season of being alone and waiting, take heart. Trust that God's timing is at work. The confidence of help you will feel when you work with him says, he has the face, so be it. Even when it seems like nothing is happening, God is orchestrating your steps. He is preparing you for something greater than you can imagine. And when the time is right, you will step into your elevation with the strength, wisdom, and clarity that God has been cultivating in you. Trust in his timing and know that it is always worth the wait.